Okay. Could you tell me your name, please?
John Walker.
John Walker. And where were you born?
Cairo.
In what year?
Georgia, in 1919.
You were what month and day?
October 2nd,
Oh, really?
1919.
1919. And where do you live right now? Your address and everything.
Here?
Yes.
954th Street Northwest.
And who were your parents?
My daddy's name was Albert Walker, and my mother's name was Eva. She was Eva Hall.
Oh, really?
Before they married.
And what did your parents do? What did your father do?
He had an automobile garage and agency here.
Uh-huh.
And since I started in 1917.
So 2 years before you were born.
Yeah, I had an older sister.
Uh-huh. What was her name?
Dorothy.
Okay.
And he went in business in 1917 right here in Cairo.
Okay, and so you lived your whole life in Cairo, Georgia.
Hmm?
You lived your whole life in Cairo?
Oh, yeah.
And you graduated from Cairo High School?
Cairo High School, Georgia Tech.
Okay, so you graduated high school and then went on to college.
Right.
And you attended Georgia Tech?
Right.
And what did you major in?
Electrical engineering.
Electrical engineering. And you graduated with a bachelor's degree?
1940.
In 1940, golly. And what did you do from the time you graduated until you joined the military?
I went to work with the city in the utility department.
Oh, okay.
I worked with them in the summertime when I was in high school. So I went to work full time with them when I graduated from school.
So you came back to Cairo.
Mm-hmm.
Did you marry right away, or?
No. I got caught in the service.
Okay.
I was in the first bunch that was drafted from Cairo.
Oh, so you were drafted?
in the draft.
Oh, you were drafted into the Army then?
In April the 3rd of 1941.
Oh, golly.
That was right when it started.
And where did you go for your basic training?
The first station was at Fort McPherson in Atlanta.
Okay.
And I stayed there a little while, and then went on to Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, to the signal school, and was there when Pearl Harbor came along.
What was your reaction?
Beg pardon?
What was your reaction when you heard about the bombing of Pearl Harbor?
That shook everybody up. But I was corresponding with my future wife, and I was in the day room writing her a letter when it came over the radio that they'd bombed Pearl Harbor. So then I transferred from there back to Fort Mac in Atlanta. And you want the chronology of where I went from there?
Exactly. And what your ranks were and what units you were with, because you probably changed.
I was still PFC.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they started everybody into draft.
Even though you had gone into college?
When I went in, I went in just for a year. Everybody was having a year in the service. So I was drafted in April. It would have been out the next April. So I wasn't looking for any ranks, ratings, or anything. I was just going to serve my year and go back to work.
Right.
But Pearl Harbor came along, that stopped everything. So I went back to Fort Mac, and I went from Fort Mac, I transferred into the Coast Artillery Corps. I was in the signal office at Fort Mac, and after the war, they were putting civilian personnel in all the places that we had up there, the work that we were doing.
Mm-hmm. So
we had to find something to do then, off the base. So I transferred to the Coast Artillery Corps, moved to Jacksonville. And they were moving at that time what they call the headquarters, Southern Sector headquarters, the Eastern Defense Command, which was protecting the coast on the East Coast.
Right.
and they moved their office from Atlanta to Jacksonville. And that was the headquarters company, and that's where that was the general that was in here, in that section there.
Who was that, or do you remember?
He was General K.T. Blood.
Okay.
Was his name. And our responsibility for his headquarters at least, was from Little River Inlet, North Carolina, down around the coast of Florida and back up to the Apalachicola River.
Huh.
And all the water out in front of all that area. Then we didn't know where, the Germans were going to invade or what.
Right.
And,
and this was still this would have been 42 now? 1942 now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Spring of 42.
Okay.
And they're setting up gun emplacements at all the ports, all the way around the East Coast and back up into the Gulf and all the way over to Mexico. So that's what this outfit was for. And this was the headquarters company. He was the commander of all that whole area, all the way around and back around to the Apalachicola River here.
And what kind of equipment did they have what were you actually dealing with as far as?
Setting up gun emplacements at all the ports.
Okay.
And of course they had patrols, walking patrols, inshore patrols, offshore patrols with boats and stuff like that. So they were just protecting the whole coast is what they were doing.
So there was there interaction then between the Navy and the Coast Guard and the?
Well, it was all coordinated together.
Mm-hmm.
Because we had Coast Guard ships, we had Navy ships, we had walking patrols on the beaches, the whole time. There was walking patrols all the way up and down that whole beach. And of course we were out there in Jacksonville and the Navy was there at Mayport. So we had real close coordination between them and us.
And you specifically did what?
I was in what they call the master gunner section.
Mm-hmm. I
did the cartography work for that whole headquarters. Made all the maps for my office did. And had test fire these guns when they put them in, and then when they would have target practice every so often, results would come back in and I'd have to evaluate and grade them and then send that on to the officers and the headquarters.
Did all the weaponry work well?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
They had a few little mishaps. They set up a gun down at Miami Beach. They had 4 guns in the battery. And they set up 2 on, there was a long pavilion, a dock, went out there and had a pavilion out on the end of it. And we set up 2 guns on each side there. So when we had first target practice with them, the vibration blew all the windows out of the end of the pier out there. And I guess the government had finally paid for all of those.
Or just leave the windows out till the war was over.
They get concussion from those guns right up each side there.
Yeah.
Nobody thought of that, but it blew the windows out the end of that place. But I did that. That's mostly what I did. And then I had an operations map there that covered that whole area all the way over to Africa and all the whole Atlantic Ocean.
Did Germans ever come? Did you ever have to fire?
Yeah, we had one incident down there, where some landed on the beach one night.
About what time was this, or month?
I don't know. They finally caught them up in New York. There was a big to-do about. They were saboteurs that were landed on the beach down there.
What beach? Do you remember?
Not Fernandez, Ponte Vedra, right below Jacksonville.
Oh.
But there was a fellow came into town that one night, said he'd been beat up by Germans, but nobody believed him. But broke out a detail and went down there anyway. And he said, I can show you exactly where it was. But we never did find anything down there. about, I don't know, a month or two later or something, they caught them in New York up there. They had landed where that fella, he was walking on the beach, but he was about half, we thought about half lit was his trouble.
Yeah.
But he wasn't. We just figured he'd been in a fight or something. So.
Do you know you don't know what kind of ship they came in on then, or was it just?
Or just, I imagine a submarine landed on there, I'm not sure. I mean, it got out of our hands yesterday. You know, a couple of months later or something, they caught them up in New York. One of the fellas up there, of that party, told on the rest of them. That's the way they caught them. But there was a lot of news, you know, about that and all. We knew about what had happened. We knew something had happened, but we never could find out what it was.
Right.
Because everything, there was so many tracks on the beach and all already. But like I said, we had walking patrols up and down there all the time. Anyway, but and this operations map that we had, I built that for the headquarters. Just covered a whole wall, and they had men standing there. And every time there was a jet ship that was spotted or fired on, we knew where all the convoys were and where all the jets. We just kept them plotted on this big map that covered a whole wall on the room there.
But it was just your area, right? So there were Japanese?
Well, no, this was in the Atlantic, not in the Pacific. We were thinking Germans then, so this headquarters was concerned with. But the General Blood had a consolidated map in his office. So I had to go down early every day and post his map before he got there, so he'd know that, you know, what had happened during the night and all.
So what hours were you on duty? I mean, what hours were you on duty?
Normally from 8 till, I guess, 6 in the afternoon or something like that. We were billeted out in town. We didn't have any barracks right there in town. The nearest barracks were out at the beach where we had a gun battery out there on Jackson Beach. It was protecting Maple. But I just had to keep his map up to date every day for him, kicking it off with the one back in the back where the G2 section was putting all the information up there. They knew where all the subs were, and knew where all the ships had been attacked. All that was plotted right there on that board.
And how communications then weren't like they are today.
We got most of it from the roof on that building looked like a porcupine. They had so many antennas up there. And most of our information came in code over the radio.
So it was pretty immediate? It was pretty immediate that you knew things?
Yeah, every time anything happened out there, we got a report on it right there in the office. And it was plotted on that board.
Okay.
We had to know what was going on in front of us out there.
Right.
So that went on until the submarine scare in 42, I guess, began to cool off. In 42 and 43. So they began to want to just close this operation out here because they'd quit sinking the ships off the coast down there. They sunk some right there. You could see them standing on the beach. You could see them when they sunk them.
So these were German ships that sunk American?
German submarines.
And were these military or merchant or both?
Merchant ships.
Merchant ships. And probably taking supplies, though, to the military or not?
Do what?
Were they taking supplies to either out of the country?
A lot of them were tankers and all. They'd come out the Gulf and they'd come around. Everything was headed north. All your convoys left from around Newfoundland up there. So these were all ships coming by, going up to join the convoys off of New York and New England coast up there. That's where Halifax, Nova Scotia was where a lot of them departed from the convoy.
And they were tankers carrying
tankers, merchant ships,
all kinds of.
all
Okay.
different kinds of ships were sunk right off the coast. And of course, we had all that information plotted on the board then all too. We had all the longitude, latitude, all that.
Why do you think they quit doing that?
It got too hot for them on the other side.
Okay.
And they couldn't get back and forth very easy because they eventually we got had planes out there that could patrol too, rather than just the ship. All that started. See, they were doing that before we ever got into war.
Mm-hmm.
They were well schooled in it. The Germans were.
Yeah.
Before we ever got in.
But what kind of fuel were they using? Do you think that had anything to do with it? Did they have enough fuel to actually?
The submarines.
Uh-huh.
They had motherships, they called them out there.
Uh-huh.
That would supply them with fuel when they got low on fuel. And of course we tried to hunt at them too. The Navy
Right.
did. Because that was, way out in the ocean. But to give you an example of how secure our operation was there, they sunk a ship up there off Savannah somewhere, a submarine. And they didn't sink it, they
Depth charge?
they attacked it.
Okay.
And the Germans abandoned it and they captured it. And they found a lot of Marita bread on that submarine. And they asked them, said, where you all get this Marita bread? Said, we went ashore in Daytona Beach the night before and bought it. So that's how good our patrol was down there.
Well, did they have different clothes that they dressed in when they did things like that?
I guess so. It's probably civilian clothes. Walked in there. They probably went ashore on a rubber raft or something.
Uh-huh.
And of course everything was blacked out. If one of these patrols just happened to come along or something, they could just walk in. If they had bought the bread, they said the night before in Daytona Beach. So, but that was on, toward everything was kind of cooling down off the East Coast there. They had run them out of North Africa and everywhere. So it was getting close on then they were looking at Europe. And they were sinking an awful lot of the German subs. So they moved their operation back to the other side of the ocean. We weren't, too involved with them then.
But there weren't Japanese, or there were Japanese?
No, Japanese were operating in the Pacific.
Oh, okay. I thought you had said earlier you were, okay. I misunderstood.
So
go ahead.
they began to move all our troops and everything out over to, the European theater.
Mm-hmm. Now, what year was this about?
This in 43.
43.
Yeah.
And how did that affect you?
They were going to move me out. Our whole headquarters, everything was just shutting down here. And the Navy, my commanding officer, Colonel Purim, was a good friend of a naval officer down there. And they were talking, about everything closing down and everything. So he asked the commanding officer, would I, like to come to the Navy then instead of going overseas? And he offered me a commission in the Navy if I would transfer to the Navy. So I was discharged from the Army one day and sworn into the Navy the next day.
How about that?
As an officer.
Yeah.
And that's when I started school again.
Mm-hmm.
But
so you were a lieutenant at this? What office?
I came in as an ensign.
Ensign,
in
okay.
the Navy.
Okay.
And my first duty then, I went to indoctrination school at Fort Scott, New York, and had learn all the Navy rigs and all then. Instead of the Army, you had to learn all those. And then went from the indoctrination school at Fort Scott, I went to the Washington Navy Yard in Washington, to the Naval Gun Factory there where they were building the guns and all. And that got into the ordnance part. of the Navy then. I guess mechanical part, or whatever you want to call it, the guns and all this kind of stuff. So and that's what he was looking for, my experience in gunnery is what he was looking for. And so we studied torpedoes and ammunition, all this kind of stuff in the Navy Yard. And even without, and blow up stuff and all this kind of stuff. Anything that would explode, that's what we were into. And not only that, but disarming anything, unexploded bombs, stuff like that. We had to learn all of them, ours, Japanese, Germans, everything to where we could disarm them if they were unexploded, wherever we were or going. And to kind of give you an idea of your thinking back then, of what you were thinking about. The way we learned to disarm most of the foreign bombs, torpedoes, whatever it was, shells, anything. The English taught us most of that because they'd been in it so long. And the way they learned it, they'd send whoever was going out to work on it, had a telephone with them. And they'd describe everything about that piece of ordnance. Every screw and everything, where it was, all this kind of stuff. And then they would, to the best of their knowledge, try to disassemble that piece of ordnance, whether it was a bomb, a torpedo, or whatever. And they were recording everything on the other end, what he saw. I'm going to take this screw loose here now and see if this will come off. And I'm going to take this one loose, bang, it blows up. So
that
the
was suicide mission.
Next time they went out to do that, they didn't touch that screw. They had a recording, don't touch this one, go to another one. And that's the way to develop the system of disarming these bombs and things. And most of it came from the British, where I don't know how many men they had lost.
Yeah.
But that's the way we knew how they were all put together. Because we had some of the same ordnance. We had some here that you didn't disarm unless you knew how. If you did, if you tried, it blew up. So, but that's the way we, learned to work with their stuff and try to disarm it.
Well, how did you feel about? There
It
was.
worried you.
Sure.
Yeah, it worried you. You didn't know where you had a piece of old ordnance or something new they'd come up with. But even we practiced the idea of having somebody else on the other end of the phone, even though we thought we knew what we were working with. In case we ran into something new, they could pass it on to the next man, because you couldn't tell them.
Right. And if, how did your unit do? How did you lose many men?
Just class after class of this kind of training went through this thing.
Okay. Did you ever have to actually do it? In the
Pacific, when I got over there, we had a lot of jet ammunition to destroy.
Okay.
But it wasn't live like that or anything. We had to get it out of the way.
So how long were you at the school in New York?
Well, I was about 6 weeks in that school. And then I went to Hingham, Massachusetts, to ordnance school up there in ammunition depot, where they stored it and all. We learned, how to store it. You had a certain way you had to store it. You had to protect it to where it would shoot when you wanted it to shoot and stuff like that. And then came back to Washington, D.C., to the American University, and went to school there for a while in learning how to disarm booby traps and landmines or anything like that.
Were you glad you joined the Navy at this point? I don't know.
Not only how to destroy somebody else's, but how to set ours too.
Uh-huh.
If we were going to booby trap something,
Uh-huh.
we knew how.
Golly.
And, I mean, we knew how too. And we knew how by practicing.
And did you work with the same men? I mean, it would seem to me it would be...
Just about my class, of course, every once in a while some of them would split off into different branches. But that's the line that they kept me in all the way back.
Because it seems like, you'd learn to read each other's minds almost. You'd need to, and know.
That's right.
Need to interact so well.
After I left that then, I went to the Chemical Warfare School in Maryland to study all about the chemical warfare. It's none been used so far, but they never knew when it might. Because your projectiles then weren't loaded ahead of time with the chemical gas or anything. You had to load it just before you used it. So you had to store it. So the chemical warfare school was how to store it, load it, use it.
So we had chemical warfare we would have used?
We sure did. We had it. We had it overseas too, ready.
And overseas in both theaters?
In the Pacific. I don't know about that.
Oh, okay.
I never did go to the European theater. I went to the Pacific when I finished.
Okay.
And,
Well, didn't the Germans use it in Russia?
they did World War I.
Okay.
I don't know that they ever used it in World War II.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But then from the chemical warfare school, I left the East Coast and went to the West Coast then they were getting into rocket launching equipment and all from planes. The Navy was. So I was transferred to the Inyo Kern, California, out in the desert, where they had this testing ground where they tested the rockets that the Navy fired. And we studied all about them, how to build them, and they were doing research on a new one when I was there too. And it was a big one. And it was the forerunner of what they launch now. But it wasn't nuclear. It was just launched like the way we had to launch them then.
And how was that? I mean, how were they launched then?
From rockets.
Oh, okay.
It was all rockets, I mean.
Okay.
Channel 8 Naval Air Station out there in the middle of the Mojave Desert where it was.
You wouldn't think a naval station would be there.
No. Well, you get up in the morning and you had heat on all night. You get up in the morning, when you go to breakfast, you go in your overcoat and come back in your shirt sleeves. Once the sun came up, it started warming up. You'd get up better than 100 during the day and be freezing at night out in that desert. It was a crazy thing. But that's what we were studying out there was the rockets.
Now, this whole time you were still in the United States at this point.
Yeah,
did you get leave or anything? Did you ever get leave?
No, about the only leave I'd get if I was transferred, say, from when I left to go to California. Get delay in travel, they call it. So if you could get out there, they give you maybe 20 days delay in travel, and you had to get yourself out there. But if you could get out there quick enough, you could go home the rest of the time. But that's about the only leave that we was having then.
So your family really didn't see you from the time you enlisted until when?
When I was in Jacksonville, my first child was born in Jacksonville. I got married when I was in Jacksonville. The girl that went on in school.
What's her name? What's her name?
Marion.
Okay.
Marion. We got married and had a child while we were in Jacksonville.
So she was with you there?
She could, because I was billeted out in town.
Okay. So she could be with you.
We didn't have any quarters in Jacksonville. And then when I went to the Washington Navy Yard, I had to find quarters up there because they didn't have quarters for us. And the government was letting people build apartments and all, but you could only rent them for a service person. And so there was one whole bunch that they just finished building when I went up there. So I was up there about 2-3 weeks, I guess, by myself. And then she came on up and joined me with the baby.
Okay.
And then when we went from there to Massachusetts, of course they went with me and the baby went. And we had the car. I built a crib for the baby that would fit in the car, would take apart, fit in the car, fit right back to the front seat. And then we put the mattress to it on the seat. And that was her playpen back there, and that's the way we traveled. So we were up there. Well, when I first got up there, when I left Navy Yard, I was having trouble with my physical trouble with my shoulders and all. So I was in the Naval Hospital up in Chelsea, Massachusetts for a while they were up there with me too. And when I left there, then that's when I went to the ammunition depot.
Now, did she know what you were doing? I mean, did she realize what your job was?
Oh yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, not the detail, but she knew what we were doing, what we were into. It was all explosive ordnance is what it was.
Yeah.
But then when we left up there, we celebrated the baby's first birthday in Massachusetts. I went west and she came home. And she was a year and a half old when I saw her again. I mean, she was 2 and a half. I missed a year and a half of her when she was just a baby. But when we left in Kern, California, then went up to Port of Embarkation at San Francisco, boarded the ship. We were headed west and went through the Marianas campaign. We took Guam, Tinian, where they eventually dropped the atomic bomb from out there.
Now, do you remember the name of the ship you went over on, or what?
General
What
Collins.
Okay, the Collins.
General Collins.
Okay, and what kind of a ship was it?
Troop transport.
Okay.
They had about 1,100 troops on there.
And what was life like on there, and how long did it take you?
It was trouble. The air conditioner was broken down. The ventilation system on the ship was broke down. And of course everything's blacked out once you hit the coast, left the coast. Everything was blacked out at night and all. And our whole complement that was going out was to go out and set up an ammunition depot out there on Guam, where we could supply the ships from there instead of from the United States. And they had taken a bunch of islands further south and all. But this was a big depot we were going to set up out there on the Guam.
Now, and did you have all this ammunition on this ship too, or was this just men? This ship was just
there was a nurses complement went out on the same ship that we were on. And we went out and stopped at Pearl Harbor for overnight. Well, it was overnight and a whole day because they gave us a day ashore the next day, and we took a tour around the island. Got a bus and took a tour around the island. We went from there to Inuitok Island that they had already taken. It's just a big atoll. And that's where we staged the convoy, going to the Marianas. And so once we left there, we were headed into the combat area.
Now, what ship were you on then? Or
That
were you
was the General Car, all the way from the West Coast on the same ship.
Okay.
It was a troop transport. But before we got to Guam, they were going to have target practice. So the plane came out of, not Guam, but Pearl Harbor. The plane came from Hawaii out there pulling one of these targets that you shoot at. We had the same armament on that troop transport that a destroyer had. We had big 5-inch, had five inch guns, 40 millimeters, 20 millimeters. And they were all supposed to shoot at that target up there, and I don't think they hit it a single time.
Oh.
I figured right down, I said, buddy, we in trouble.
Just so they didn't hit the plane.
I'll go home and get my shotgun. I can do better than that. But it took us 31 days to get to Guam because we were in convoy. Just zigzag.
Yeah.
And,
Do you know, were you with an aircraft carrier? Do you know which one it was, or do you know the
it
names?
wasn't a carrier. We had destroyers
Uh-huh.
escorting the convoy.
Okay.
With your big ships and all. They were at Guam when we at Hawaii, when we pulled in there. We were there day and night. And the Missouri was sitting there then. We got the enemy top. The Missouri and all her ships were sitting there at the enemy top, waiting on us.
Huh.
And then when we got to Guam, here's the Missouri.
Huh.
So that was a whole task force going out. That's what it was.
And like, how many ships might that in?
I don't know. We pulled in the end and we talked about it. It looked to me like there was 1,000 of them in there. It's a big atoll. It must, I don't know how big it across miles across from one side to the other.
Well, how did you eat? I mean, what was the food like on that transporter? And what were the living
The
conditions?
food was pretty good. They just fed continuously. You just had a certain time that you went to eat, but had so many on there.
Yeah.
And of course, everything inside, you had to stay closed up all the time. Because at night especially, because everything was blacked out. But with the ventilating system on the thing broken down, everything in there just stayed wet. The walls were just water on the walls all the time. Real humid and hot. And they give you so long up on the top, on the deck, outside. Then you had to go back down to your compartment. And they'd let somebody else go up there.
Did the men get along pretty well considering the conditions, or did the conditions really?
Our bunch, right after we left out, they all got seasick.
Yeah.
But after we got over that, they had the nurses, they had some nurses and some doctors on there that they were shipping out at the same time we did. And the doctors all had seasick medicine, I guess. We kept begging them for some. No, this is ours. And one of our fellows got in such bad shape, they decided they better try to help him out a little bit, because he couldn't get up and down anything. But the only trouble was they all thought of it at the same time. They like to kill him with medicine. But they got him well in a hurry.
Do you remember the names of the men that you worked with?
Yeah,
or where they might be from?
A picture over there with their names all written on the back of it. There's one I was in at Jacksonville. That's a training device I built for them down there for the Army. The short fellow in the middle there, that was Colonel Perry. He was my boss. He was my buddy too.
Is he still alive? Do you know? Or do you ever go to any reunions of any kind?
Never. Once they busted that outfit up, I don't know where all they went. But I had some pictures of him.
I'm going to show you some things you can kind of look at on the internet where they try to locate people. I don't know if you're interested, but there are all kinds of things they're doing now. A veteran registry.
That's the way we're storing them. We've got over 400 magazines over there.
Good. What? I'm real ignorant. What kind of weapon? I mean,
those are 5-inch projectiles.
Okay.
Here's the powder. That's the way we stored the powder.
Okay.
Each round of powder came in an aluminum container. The gunpowder did. And we had to store it in those magazines. When we first got there, we had 3 10,000-ton ships of ammunition sitting offshore. They're waiting for us to bring it ashore.
And you had to physically load it and unload it? I mean, that was part of your job too? And
they had, what do you call it, stevedores battalions. We had 2 of them attached to us, but ours, we used ours on the shore. But they had us. They didn't have a harbor at Guam when we got over there. They built that after we got there.
was that the Seabees that did that, or do you know if any guys from Cairo were there, or?
No, there were none of them from around here that I know of.
Okay.
But they built a lot of them back in the mountain.
Okay, in caves or such, or?
Well, they just dug it out.
They just dug it out. Okay. Because I know some of those islands had a lot of caves on them.
Oh, they did. This whole island was caves. I was trying to get one in here there. There's a dedication. That was our headquarters building after we built it.
And this is still on Guam, right?
I imagine it's still there, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But when we got there, I was going to tell you there was a bomb storage area we had. But we had 3 10,000-ton shiploads. And that was my officers.
Okay. Wow.
See now there's some 16-inch. That's where your ammunition came shipped. That's 16-inch part of that. It goes to,
I'm sorry.
It goes to a 16-inch gun.
And they had to be stacked a certain way, and.
That's right. But we had, before we even had our first magazine, we had over 500,000 rounds of that 5-inch powder stored right out in the open where the Jap could get to it or whatever they wanted to do. But when they went ashore there on Guam, where we landed was right in the middle of the island. And like I say, they didn't have a port or anything. They just bring it in these what they call ducks, amphibious type vehicles. Bring it ashore and send it on up there to us. But when the Marines went in and took the island, they just cut it half in two. And because they were looking for those airfields up on the north end.
Now, which Marines? Do you remember which Marines it might have been? Third.
They all wound up there eventually.
Okay.
Some on South Bend,
Okay.
Tinian, and Guam. I don't know which ones came in Guam.
Okay.
But they unloaded down there and brought it on up to us. But when they took the island, they just cut it half in two. And then they swept north on up to take the airfield up on the north end of the island. They said, now y'all can have the other end. And then they did sweep it. So all the Japs that was caught down there on that end were still there. Even some of them were still there when we left. In those caves, you're talking about those caves. That every time we'd find one, we'd just blow it shut. Just put explosive up on it and blow it shut. But find out later it didn't do any good because they went all the way through to the other side of the mountain.
They had tunnels.
They could go through and come out the other side. But we had, I didn't know if I had a picture here about the only accident we had out there. We're over on the east side of the island.
Now, how did you take these pictures? Cause
the Navy took them for us.
Oh, okay.
And they were all declassified where we could bring them home.
Oh, okay.
That's the gunner's mates. But see, all this had to be built. That was our camp and all over there, wasn't it? That was enlisted men's camp.
Wow.
But I have pictures somewhere. Yeah. There I wanted to show you. The only casualty we had. That magazine.
Uh-huh.
There's another picture of me out in front of it.
Okay.
But what happened,
Okay.
this was way down in the south end of the magazine area. And probably 2.5 miles from where the headquarters building was.
Mm-hmm.
But one day we were fixing to leave after lunch, go back into the magazine area. And it looked like the whole south end of the island blew up. What in the world is happening? So gunner's mate and I was standing there talking where we were fixing to go. So we took off down in there to see what it was that exploded. And it was that magazine that had exploded. And we figured we were under attack from some of the Japs that were left down there.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went in there, the gunner's mate and I did, to that same magazine right in front of it. And the road was up kind of high, going up through a little swale like that. And we were standing on the edge of that road looking at that kind of mess. It was all still smoking and everything. And the sheriff came right between us and went in the ground right in front of us out there and exploded. And I don't ever want to hear that same sound again.
Oh, it must have been
We
horrible.
were standing there about 2-3 feet apart and it went right between us. And what had happened over on the East Coast, they had given the Marines a corridor down the east coast of the island into what we call Jap territory down at the south end, because we never did take that down there. And they'd bring these new and used Marines both back in there to practice. They set them up a practice range over there. So that's what they were doing. They called themselves having target practice. But they had the gun pointed the wrong direction.
I guess so.
And they shot it in front
Oh
of
my goodness.
It
But
ran-
no one was
ran-
was hurt?
it. You know, you saw the picture,
Yeah.
the 16-inch powder.
Uh-huh.
There was 400 and something cans of that in that magazine. And that projectile went right through the front door. It shook that whole aisle.
And nobody was hurt.
Well, they had all come out to eat lunch. We'd been back there putting ammunition up to.
And what happened to those guys who shot that?
I don't know. But I mean, there was all kind of brass down there. looking
Oh,
around.
yeah.
And another experience we had, I guess we called the only gas attack in the war, was over there. When they were invading Okinawa, because we had to supply them with all the ammunition, smoke, everything else. They wanted anything that makes smoke, send it to us. Because the Jap, these suicide planes, they were diving in there on everything, hospital ships and all. There's one came back to Guam and limped back in. And the operating room, of course, was up on the top floor where they could get light. And it had the Red Cross planted up in all, and one of those jokers had gone right down through one of the operating rooms. One of those kamikazes. They had a big Red Cross. But they were hollering, you know, send us smoke, anything that'll make smoke. And the smoke that we had comes in 55-gallon drums. It's a liquid. Until they put it in their thing that dispenses it on the ship. And we had one of them started leaking back in the magazine area. So the magazine area was just a big valley back in there. It had mountains all the way around it. And you could go on real mountains, except for that valley back there. Skipper says, well, just waiting one day we'd get the wind blowing right and we'll you know, dump it. And it'll blow off the south end of the island back there where the Japs are. Okay. So they were hauling for smoke up there. We were shipping everything we could get our hands on. And we told them, let's ship that too. No. We can't put that on board ship. So we decided to go ahead and empty it, get it out of the way, because it just smoke just creeping out of that drum, that steel drum had a leak in it. He said, go ahead and dump it. The wind was just right to carry it off the end of the island. So we poured it out there on the ground, 55-gallon drink. You've never seen such smoke in all your life. And after the smoke dissipated and all, you could still smell it in the air. It really burned your nose.
What was it? I mean, how did
It
they
was some kind of
chemical?
chemical is what it was.
So-
When it hits the air, it forms this dense smoke.
Oh, okay.
And it's real acrid smelling if you get in any of that smoke and everything. So we didn't think anything more. We were still loading the containers, shipping them out. And Island Command, Nimitz had moved out there then. And he was up at Island Command, which was up above where the town used to be, up over High Mesa up there. They built an airport up there too. That's where your commercial airport is over there now. And they moved all the brass from Hawaii to Guam. Well, somebody up there smelled this stuff. It had gone out the south end of the island, caught the wind, come right back up the side of the island up there. That smell hit. All they could think about was gas. Gas attack. They sounded the gas alarm on the whole island. The first thing you throw away when you go ashore is your gas mask. Oh, it's just bulks, all it is.
Yeah.
Nobody used gas, nothing. You don't want to tote this thing around anywhere. They said that was the damnedest fight up there you ever saw. Everybody trying to steal everybody's gas mask. They finally came down there, figured out it had come down our way somewhere. But they never did figure out how it got there.
And you never told them either.
We never told me. Skipper says, we done triggered the first gas attack of the war.
Against our own men.
We never did tell anybody where that stink came from. But they said it's comical after a while. Everybody trying to take everybody's gas mask away from them.
Yeah.
But I was still over there when they dropped the bomb. We had begun to get scuttlebutt that our whole outfit would move on up, probably to Okinawa somewhere, when they were going to Japan. And we were just hoping that wasn't going to happen. But it was getting, the shipping line from us to them would have been too far all the way to Japan. So we'd had to move up island, hop on up to around Okinawa somewhere. But they dropped that bomb, and I mean everything shut down in a hurry. And they came out with the point system that told you, when you could come home. I'd been in service longer than any of them over there, except the, regular Navy men. So when it came out with the point system, everybody had to go up to the skipper's office to see what it said. So I went up there. He and I were the only two who had enough points to come home. And I said, write them out. He said, ain't no way. He says, I'm going to have to wait for a replacement. He says, you're not going before I do.
And how old were you by now? How old were you by now?
Oh, that was in 45.
Okay.
And I was born in 19. I was 26 years old.
Okay.
Been in there 5 years almost. And, but he was just teasing me.
Oh.
But he went ahead and cut my orders. And I was the first one from our outfit that had enough points to come home. And he got they set up a summit down there where everybody that's going home goes down there. And any kind of ship coming back, they put you on it. And most of them were these little, we call them Jeep carriers, small carriers. And they could ship 1,000 enlisted men and 100 officers on each load. That's the ratio they shipped them back. And he wouldn't even let me go down there. I said, no, you're going to stay up here and work. And he told the skipper in charge of that demarcation bunch, I guess, says, you just call me when you got a place for him. Says, I'll get him down there. But said, just let him stay up here and put him to work. So they called one morning just about daylight. The guard came down there at our barracks. Said, hit the road. They're waiting for you down there. Got your ship home. I had my sea bag all packed and everything. I lived out every day to the day, hour to hour.
I wondered about that.
I snapped the lock on that thing, put my clothes on, and here I went.
And how long did it take you to get home on that ship?
11 days, back to the States.
Where'd you land?
It took us 31 days to go and 11 to come back.
Wow.
But we were sailing free and lights and all coming back. Just that one ship right by itself on a carrier, on one of those little Jeep carriers. And we slept up on deck most
Really?
of the time on the way back, just cooling it. We landed, came back, pulled into San Francisco to Alameda Air Station out there, and that's where we unloaded.
And this was summer still? The summer?
This was in October.
Oh, October.
October
Okay.
45.
Oh, that's right, because the bomb was in August, right? I apologize.
But I unloaded, was sent to the, I don't know where they carried the enlisted men, but all the officers had to report in to the, I guess, the Naval District Headquarters in San Francisco. So we went up there, and that's another one of these places. You know, we don't have any quarters. You have to find your own quarters. But said the YMCA down here set up that gymnasium and put cots in there. And you go down there and say you stay for $1 a day in that YMCA. So we all caused a taxi or something, went downtown, went in, we got in and got a place. They just had cot. There must have been, I don't know, 300-400 of them at least in the gymnasium there. But it's just transients. They'd sign you a bid. All you had with you was your sea bag.
And how long were you there?
I was there a week. And I went on over to the train station. It was across the bay in Oakland. So I went over there to try to, get a train back home. I was assigned to Charleston Naval Base for separation from the service. And so got over there, and he took they had it set up real good. They'd take your name and all, and you could give them your name there at the depot, and they'd call that gymnasium, and they'd alert you if you were left. They'd tell you, you got a ride if you get over there.
So you had no real responsibilities once you got...
Not at all. In other words, I had to go by the headquarters to get my orders endorsed because they had to know that I had transportation. So they endorsed my orders to the commanding officer of the Naval Base in Charleston, South Carolina. But the man said, I got you a ride home, but you're going to have to go by Chicago. I was wanting the straightest route back. But took the Feather River route, went to Chicago, and called my wife from Chicago again. I'd called her from out there long distance as I was back in the state. I had my birthday while I was out there. And called her and told her I was in Chicago now, and told her when I would get to Atlanta. And she was with her parents up there close to Atlanta, at Jackson, Georgia. She and the baby. So I told her when I'd be up there, maybe about 9 o'clock at night or something like that, that I'd be coming in. I had scheduled to come in. So I came on home, walked in the old train station up there, the one they tore down in Atlanta. And she had been showing my baby my pictures. And that's Daddy. That's Daddy. And I walked in that station. They were sitting up there on the bench. And here she come running.
Oh.
Telling you.
So quite a homecoming, huh?
That's my daddy.
Boy, that makes you feel good. Now, did you have when you left, did they have anything nice when you left?
Got on, well, I drove my car to Washington when I left. Of course, I don't have to have it for them out there. But then when I got to Charleston over there, she went with me to Charleston, to the Navy base over there to get separated, get out of service. They wouldn't dismiss me. There was 2 classifications that they weren't discharged. And mine was one of them.
Oh, no.
Explosive ordnance expert.
So what happened?
That and the people that run the radar things, they said you're going to be in the inactive reserves. Well, they must have just kick me out for some reason or something. Let me go home. I'm ready to go home. When I got out of the reserves? 1953.
And you were active all that
I
time?
was inactive in inactive reserves all that time.
So they could have called you back at any time.
Anytime they wanted to.
And that's when Korea.
When Korea came along, I just built this house. In 51, I think it was. In 51, 52. We just built the house in 1950. And 51, I guess. But about every year or two, they'd send me orders to go to Jacksonville to take a physical. Naval Air Station. So I'd take a physical. Well, I went 2 times, I think, took them. I said, well, then I ain't going back anymore. And if they want me, they'll have to come get me. So when the Korean War started, one day I got this, still got it. You have 60 days. I was working, had a good job with the city. They'd come back, got my job here with the city, built the house, and they were sending me orders to come back. So you have 60 days to get your business in order. And this was the ordnance department, Blue Ordnance. They had instructed your personnel to cut my orders, give me 60 days delay to report. I told everybody here what was happening and all the counts on everything, and I'm going to have to leave. And the 60 days was up, and I never had gotten any orders. But before that, I was in City Hall down there one day, and this Lieutenant Commander walked in there, hunting John Walker. I said, that's me. He said, you had orders to report to Jacksonville to take a physical for promotion, didn't you? I said, yeah. I said, I didn't want to get promoted, though. I just want out. He says, well, let me tell you this then. If you don't go, the next people that come will be the shore patrol. And you will go. So, Lord have mercy. So, that wasn't too long before I got these orders, or they were sending them orders to go back. So after those 60 days, I didn't go in then either. And I'd have taken most anything to keep that reserve. But the orders never did come for me to report. And I got to wondering, I said, well, now I wonder if they lost my address and they think I'm supposed to come up there. Those shore patrols may come down here, not to take me to Jacksonville, but to take me somewhere else. So one of my buddies from Guam stayed in the service. They over there, when they came out with the points, they offered you 60 days leave at home and your commission permanent in that rank, because all your wartime promotions were temporary. So they'd give you a permanent promotion to what your rank it was at that time and send you right back where you were. I thought, so you let me set my foot back in the United States, you won't be bothering me anymore. So, but one of my buddies over there stayed in the service and wound up in the Ordnance Department in Washington. And we corresponded there once in a while. So I wrote him, I said, now don't let them know that I've asked anybody, but see if you can find out what happened to those orders that I never did get. So in a few days he wrote me back. He says, you won't believe it, you became overage and grade in those 60 days. And that was in October of 52, I guess it was.
Bless you.
And I said, well, where was I going? He said, you'd have been the range test officer on the range of the naval test range in Erie, Pennsylvania.
Oh.
The naval station up there. That's where you ordered were to go there. Where I would have gone from there, never know. But that just about killed me. I was fixing to have to go. But by not going and taking those physicals, I didn't get promoted.
Uh-huh.
And when they looked at my rank and my age, I was over age and grade. And they had to promote me, I guess, to get me back in there. But instead, they never did send them an order.
Well, good.
I got to.
I think you gave enough time and
stay
enough.
right here. I've been in that 5 years already. That was enough. It was almost 5 years. I went in April, came out in November. Liking that much time being 5 years. Lost a year and a half with being with my baby.
And then you had another child, or?
Yeah, I was just getting settled in my work, all this kind of stuff. I'd been interrupted enough, I think. But then, not going back then, I was still in the inactive reserves.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't release me, regardless of my rank. They wouldn't call me, I guess, if we'd had another war or something. Big conflict, I'd have to go back.
But now, if you'd not been in ordnance, if you'd just been something else, you would have been released.
Other than those two classifications.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, that's something to know, isn't it?
But my brother-in-law was a doctor up in Charlton. And by then, I suffered from back trouble.
Uh-huh.
They hurt my back when I was in the hospital up in Massachusetts. And I was getting in pretty bad shape by then. My spine's all messed up. And I had operations on my shoulder, and they used me. It was such a rare operation at that time. He called a lot of the younger doctors in there to use me for demonstrate, and they hurt my back. So that didn't seem to make any difference with them, but it sure made it. I wore a brace for 13 years.
Really?
From my shoulders down below my hips for 13 years. And my brother-in-law says, I don't know, says, maybe I can get you out of the reserves. And he knew a fellow in Macon, a doctor in Macon. I guess he'd gone to school with him or something. He'd been in the service too. That examined veterans and all for the service. And he says, I'll see if I can get you certified for an examination. And he did. And they wrote my orders to report back to Charleston. This was in '53. And for evaluation, physical evaluation.
Uh-huh.
So when I got up there and they saw the trouble I was in, they said, well, I don't think you'll ever be,
Right.
Be able to come back in the service. And so they wrote me up for discharge. So that's the way I got out of the reserves. I got all the medical record and everything.
Did you ever have to go to the VA for any? Did you ever use the VA?
Never. Well, they wrote me up for 10%
Disability?
So I've had 10% disability.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where that paid for wearing that brace or not.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd have been bent double if I had to put that brace on me. But my whole spine just went bad.
But you don't wear a brace now, or?
No, I still got it up there in the
You
attic,
do?
but I hadn't worn it. I wore it for 13 years from after then. Well, it wasn't right after then. I had to go and went to a civilian doctor then. And he's the one that put the brace on me. I wore it for 13 years, and the spine just fused together from one end to the other. So I can't stoop or bend my spine. All I can do is twist my neck. But that's what kept me out of the Korean conflict. My brother-in-law, he had to go back. He was in the Air Force. And he went back and he just stayed. And I had made up my mind, if I had to go back, I was going to go ahead and retire in the service. Because there's no use to try to come back in and start over for a third time.
Mhm. But the city gave you your job back without any problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I stayed out, I guess, about a year. And they had an opening that they advertised for.
Mhm.
And I decided I'd go for it, and I did, since I'd had a lot of experience with them before.
Mhm.
Even while I was in school, I'd worked summers with the city. So I pretty well knew that with the utility department. So I went to that. Went back with the city. And stayed down there for, I think it was 26 years.
Mhm.
I was down there. And by then they had gone to a city manager type form of government.
Mhm.
And it had 1, 2, 3 city managers. And they advertised for the fourth one. And I'd been with the city for 26 years then.
Mhm.
So I applied for it and got it. And I was city manager then for 19 years.
Mhm.
So I spent my whole life, you might say,
Working for the city.
working for the city.
Well, government of one kind, federal government, and then.
That's right. So that, I retired in 1983. And then went back in 1990. Well, I had a heart attack the year after I retired. And stayed in the hospital in Atlanta. It was about 13 weeks or something. I went bad on them after my heart bypass surgery.
Mhm.
I went bad on them. I had to stay up there. In 1990, I'd pretty well recuperated except for my back. And I ran for council. I served 5 years as a councilman.
Mhm.
So I had 49 years in all service with what you might say with the city and the federal government together. I guess that federal service, I guess, was service for the city too.
Right, exactly.
Felt that way anyway.
That's right.
But so far, I guess I was just lucky in not, not getting in any physical combat.
That's what I was wondering. You weren't injured in any way in the war?
No, nothing, other than the Jacksonville experience and being out there in Guam. Of course, they were still surrendering. The Japanese were when about a week before I left. I run into a whole bunch of them back in the magazine area back there. What they did, the prisoners they had captured, they brought them in, and the ones that wanted to, they would work them.
Mm.
Groundskeeping and all this kind of, all around Nemesis headquarters and all. The Japanese are the ones that kept the grounds and all that. And they got out, and then they sent some of them back out in the jungle. There was Japs everywhere out in the jungle on the south end of the island. They just never did take it. They'd come steal food out of you around the camps and stuff like that. They never did try to give us any. We had one boy killed that they shot one night. But they tried to stay hid as much as they could.
Yeah.
So what they did, they took some of these Japanese, and they had, I don't know whether they already could speak English or what, sent them back into the jungle to get the rest of them back there, the ones that would surrender.
Mm-hmm.
And every once in a while, they'd tell them, we'd leave you back there a week now. And a week from now, we'll come back and pick up what you've got. So right before I left, I went over a little hill back there one day, riding by myself in my Jeep, and the road was sitting full of Japs. I'd like to have died. And that was right before they dropped the bomb.
Oh, the war. Oh.
We were still at war then. And this one Jap came up to me, he could speak, and he was speaking English, and says, we surrendered, we surrendered. I said, that's fine, let me back out of here and I'll go get you some transportation. So I left and went back up to the office. It was about 2.5, 3 miles back up there. And they sent a trailer out there, loaded them up, brought them in. And I followed them back in. And when they came over that hill there where our headquarters was, you could look down on the harbor. You see, the herds are jabbering and carrying on in your life. They hadn't been where they could see down there, I don't guess.
Yeah.
They couldn't believe what all was down there, because they had built a harbor and all down there then. They just built a big jetty out there.
Well, were these men in good shape, or were they? Do you think maybe they were starving,
or mostly ragged, clothes-wise? Is what they were. Because there was one captain over there in the Navy, Japanese Navy. They never did catch him. And every time the bombers would take off headed for Japan, he'd radio them and tell them they're coming. And they'd hunt him. They had planes over there, these little Piper Cubs. And they put mufflers on them where the engines wouldn't make no noise. And they'd fly around up at night watching for campfires and things. And we could see them there from our headquarters. Every once in a while you'd see a rocket go to the ground. They'd spotted a campfire or something down there. They'd fire a rocket into it. But that was about the only combat that was going on at that time. But they sure tried to find him. He'd radio and then he'd go off somewhere else. They couldn't find him. That's the only time he'd use his radio is when he's warning them that the raid coming. On Japan or Okinawa, wherever. But he surrendered after the war. He
did. Well, he sure probably served a very good purpose. I'm sure they were glad he was there.
I was hoping they'd catch him while I was still over there. I want to see him.
Yeah.
He was a sharp cookie.
I wonder who he was. I wonder what happened to him.
I don't know. He probably went back to Japan and earned a medal, probably.
Yeah.
After it moved on up from us, went to Iwo was the next place it took, where they took the Philippines about the same time they took Guam. And then they moved on up to Iwo Jima. The bombers, a lot of the bombers, be shot up or something. They were trying to get another base somewhere they could land, coming back maybe if they could make it back that far. And after they took Iwo Jima, then they went on up and took Okinawa. But there was a lot of planes saved on those 2 islands. I just couldn't make it all the way back. The thing that it bothered me, we had put them in these troop ships and all that were going in these invasions. They loaded right there in Guam. Because when they were in a campaign, they brought them back to Guam and they were trained right there and replenishing their personnel and stuff like that. But to go down there and, carrying this ammunition down there, putting it on the ship and everything, and see them coming out there, boarding that ship, they were just like zombies. They just staring, walking, staring, had a pack on their back. And they didn't know whether it was coming back or not.
And probably a lot of them didn't, although...
Heck, a lot of them did. But it just tear you up to see them the way they were just like robots or something, marching up on those ships. To them, that was the end of the world. But it really hit next Tuesday.
And, could you tell the age of most of them, or? Could you tell the age?
More and more. They were getting younger and younger all the time. Because most of them, the Marines especially, that were in there at the beginning, very few of them made it back. We had 2 of them here at home. One of them dead. One of them died. Jimmy Hicks, he was sheriff here for a while. And Mark Clark, both of them worked with the REA. And, Lamar was wounded on Iwo Jima. He got sent back. And I guess Jimmy stayed there the whole time. But they were a different person when they came. They weren't from here. They came back here working with the REA when they first put the REA in here.
Mm-hmm.
They moved in here and helped build the first REA. That's the way they got the Kilo started. But I never did run into them out there. I didn't even know what outfit they were in.
Did you ever see anyone from this area?
No.
You never?
There was a man from my wife's area up there, was in the supply depot down there. But I didn't know that till I got back.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't know he was over there till he got back.
Yeah.
But,
I know Joe Gandy. You know Joe Gandy?
hmm?
Do you know Joe Gandy?
Yeah, what?
Do you know Joe Gandy? Do you know him? You know, he's head of the Golden K, the president of Golden K.
I don't know that.
Okay.
He must
It's all right.
be with it.
Okay.
But one odd thing, my wife's younger sister, he was a doctor, my older sister was too, but the younger sister got in, he was in med school, so he had to finish, and then he had to serve a certain time in the service for being deferred.
Mm-hmm.
And they moved into Texas, down at San Antonio, that base down there. And I got a grandson out there now. But they were living out there, and we owned a department store there one day. And we're talking and said something about Georgia. And the colored fella that was waiting on him said, "You from Georgia?" I said, "Yes." It's, "What part of Georgia are you from?" I said, "Up there close to Atlanta, Jackson, Georgia, where both of them are from." He says, "Well, my commanding officer was from Georgia." I said, "Yes." Says, "Who was that?" I said, "Lieutenant Walker." He was in Texas, in a department store. And she said, "Well, that's my brother-in-law."
Oh.
And he was in my outfit up there on the wall.
Oh. So you had blacks in your outfit?
Yeah, we had 2 stevedore battalions.
And what's it?
Everything was still segregated then.
Yeah.
And I got a copy of their camp here somewhere.
Okay, I don't.
We
say
had
I'm
these fellas in
ignorant.
there
What
too
does
now.
that mean?
Those were Romanians there that were in the Navy when the Japs took it over.
They were where? From Guam?
They were in Guam,
Okay.
and they were in the Navy. So they just went civilian when the Japs came back.
Oh, okay.
And they were our guards at
Oh.
night in the jungle over there when we were loading and unloading ammunition. We used them as guards for our personnel, because none of our personnel I was on. But these were the only,
So the blacks were the ones that loaded the
they were the
ammunition?
ones that did all the loading and all. So
And how dangerous, did any of them, did you lose any of them?
leave them over there.
No, did you lose any of them
No.
through death? So they all were,
I was going to show you the area of the camp. I could find there it is. In other words, there's their camp, and this is our camp over here.
oh, okay. So they were closer to the
Oh,
ammunition.
they're right. And they put their own guards out and everything.
Uh-huh,
And when we first got there, everything was in tents.
uh-huh.
We had to build our own quarters after we got there.
Okay.
But one night, they had a machine gun set up on each corner of their camp.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the jungle was cleared back for a little piece out there, and your outhouse was out there, and you never went out there without a buddy with you.
Mm-hmm.
And one night, hadn't been there very long, one of them heard something. "There's a Jap, there's a Jap." He cuts loose with his machine gun. All the rest of them start shooting. And there wasn't a tent down there that didn't have a hole in it. And not a single person got hit.
Oh, wow. That was,
But they shot those tents all to pieces down there. After that, Skipper took the guns away from them.
But what now? Their commanding officers, though. What I mean, their officers that were they white or were they black?
They didn't have any officers.
They didn't have officers.
No, it was just a work detail. That's what you want to call it. The stevedore battalion, they called it. And they did. We had the gunner's mates, that were trained, but they're the ones that did most of the work. Now
And did they come over on the same ship with you?
No, they were a ship ahead of us, I guess. They landed there about the same time. But I don't know how they got there. They weren't on our ship. Most of them on our ship were the gunner's mates and all. And we stopped in Pearl Harbor on the way over and picked up, I call them 3 holes full, 3 compartments on the ship full of Marines that had been shipped back as misfits. That's the meanest bunch of people you ever saw in your life. They had kept them all in those 3 compartments, and they just let one compartment at a time go up for air. And we all had to stand guard, one in each compartment, because they didn't have enough ship's personnel, see, to do guard duty or whatever you call it, monitor or whatever it is. So we had different compartments. There was 5 compartments deep, 5 long. There's 25 compartments, and there were troops in them. And we had to stand watch, take our turn standing watch in each one of them. And there was 3 of those, full of these misfit Marines that had been shipped back for punishment to Hawaii. And I guess the story, I don't know, going around, might have been truth to it or not, that they'd get in trouble over there just to get shipped home instead of facing combat. There's just so many of them that would do something like that. But they never would ship them home. They ship them back to Hawaii, rehabilitate them, they call it, or whatever, and send them back over there. So we picked up 3 compartments full of these misfits.
Now when was this?
This was going over there in
Going over?
40, yeah, going over there. They were sending them back to combat duty. And of course, once we landed over there, they went for their outfit.
Yeah.
And we didn't see or have anything else to do with it. We had a lot of stuff we had over there had to do was disposing of Jap ammunition and stuff like that. It was left, we hauled it out to sea and dump it, because we had to load it and unload it. We had to load and unload our stuff, give it to the ships that needed ammunition. They'd go out and shoot up all the ammunition, come back in there, we refill their needs with ammunition.
Now, did you run into anything when you were disarming that you hadn't had experience with?
No, we pretty well knew
what
we were going to see. In fact, we even had I still got it. I might have given it to my grandson. We had set up one officer there, a lab, and was disarming and certifying shells that the Japanese, had left, that we could bring them home for souvenirs.
Yeah.
But he had he disarmed them. He had 2-3 fellas hit him. But they'd take all the explosive out of them, fire the primers on them, all this kind of stuff. And they'd give you a certificate that it was inert. And that way you could bring it home.
Did you ever have anything to do with torpedoes?
We studied a lot of them at the Navy Yard. They were having a lot of trouble with our torpedoes not exploding when they'd hit a ship with it.
Thank you. I read that somewhere, and I had asked somebody about that.
And we studied them, and while we were there, I guess, found the trouble. The firing pin in it was made out of aluminum. And instead of penetrating the primer, it would bend. And it made a dud out of it.
Oh, that's what it was. I had heard that they had set them in one altitude or something, and that then in that different altitude they didn't
You
work.
could set them whatever depth you wanted them to run.
Uh-huh.
See, if you were running, going to torpedo a shallow ship,
Uh-huh.
you'd set them for a certain depth.
Uh-huh.
If you wanted something like a cruiser battleship or a cargo ship sitting way down in the water,
Uh-huh.
you'd set the depth. Whatever you could set the depth, whatever depth you wanted.
Uh-huh.
And it'd run at that depth. Once you fire it out with water, with air.
Uh-huh.
You blow it out the sub with air.
Okay.
And of course when it goes out, it triggers the motor in. And it goes in at whatever depth. You can't guide it anymore.
Right, once it's gone.
It'll run at that depth from then on
Uh-huh.
until it hits them.
Now, how long would they run? What if they didn't hit and they just kept going?
Well, eventually sink.
Oh, okay.
You had it when it sank, because you didn't want anybody to capture one of them and copy it.
Oh, okay.
So you wanted it to sink when it was over with.
Okay.
So
But would they be still live? I mean, they would. I mean, once
it'd be
they.
like go to the bottom of the ocean bottom and explode
When they hit the
Yeah.
bottom.
because
Okay.
it's an inertia type firing pin. So when it hit
Okay.
something, that firing pin went into the booster.
What's the principle behind depth charges? I mean, did you ever deal with them?
Nothing other than study them and all.
Uh-huh.
And help develop, I guess, what took their place. The hedgehog.
Oh, okay.
Did you ever hear of that?
I've heard of it, but I don't.
Hedgehog. Your depth charges exploded on pressure.
Oh, okay.
So you just dialed in, you roll them off from the back of the ship and you shoot them on a wide gun off the side of the ship. You want to lay a pattern down there. So you dump some, shoot some, dump some, shoot some, hoping that you're still right over. And but you had to guess what depth you thought it was. And you could determine that pretty well by charting him before you started bonding. But you had to set the depth that you wanted them to go off, explode.
Mm-hmm.
And if you set the wrong depth, it could go down there and hit him, bounce off, and go on down deeper before it ever go off.
Uh-huh.
There was no percussion or anything to it. It was just strictly depth. And they give you the depth setting. You just crank that in on it, roll it off, and when it reached that depth, that pressure,
Uh-huh.
set it off.
And then what was it? The percussion damage that it did, or what? I mean, it blow holes in. How powerful?
If it was close enough to the sub, it'd split and bust him open.
Okay.
And it was a concussion type
Okay.
project is what it is.
Okay.
Very seldom you might bounce one off of one or something, but when it exploded, hopefully under it, break him in two.
Oh, I see.
Still, anything like that, anything to where you can get that concussion to it.
Uh-huh.
And that's the reason you drop them behind you and out on each side. You were laying down a pattern,
Uh-huh.
one right after the other. And like I say, you set the depth on them.
So they would explode one right after another, and that would create more.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Now, if they would explode when each one reached its depth.
Uh-huh.
You set a little bit of different depth on
On each
different
one.
ones. But then they came out with another one then that was shaped like a teardrop that sunk a lot faster.
Uh-huh.
Because the trouble with those first ones, it was like a steel drum, about the same size.
Mm-hmm.
There's a steel drum, it just tumble down there, and he's running hard as he can. See? So then they came out with these that they were kind of teardrop shaped. They had a fin on the back of them to make it spin down faster.
Oh, okay.
It had the same charge in it and all, but it would get down that way it was a lot faster. Then, about the time, well, we practiced with a lot of what they called a hedgehog. Okay. It was a lot smaller, only about that big around, and I made it held probably 100 pounds TNT instead of 1,000 pounds. they had this rack sitting on the front of the ship with spokes on it like this.
Mm-hmm.
And you could control the elevation and all of these spokes. And this hedgehog, they had two kinds. They wound up usually using just one. They had a rocket version and a concussion version, one that you shoot off.
Mm-hmm.
And what they did, the trouble too with the ash cans, we call them, the old type.
Mm-hmm.
Once you got an explosion under the water, your sonar deal was no good.
Oh.
So if all those air bubbles and all, you just saw something everywhere you looked.
Oh,
so
I never
your
thought
sonar
of
was
it.
no good once you started an attack with an ash can, or even with the type that's sunk in a hurry. Once you get an explosion down there, that's it, so far as your radar or your sonar's concerned. Unless you can run them off out yonder somewhere else and pick them up again, maybe tonight. But they wanted something to counteract that. So they made these, what they call hedgehogs. It stood up about that high,
Mm-hmm.
and the explosives in it was about that much of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it had a tube on the back of it with a fin on it. And it had the fuse on the top was a little propeller driven thing. So it was safe until that propeller made however many revolutions it had to make. It would screw off and it would arm itself. All right, they put, I think it was about 12 or 14 of those on this rack, right out on the front of the ship. And when they tracked the sub, they got him right where they wanted him, and they fired these things.
Huh.
And they were patterned off of that thing to come down in an oval like this.
Huh.
See, so you could miss him. They knew just about where he was this way, but if he tried to turn or something, see, he might try to get away from it.
Yeah.
So they made him come down in an oval, maybe 100 yards apart or something like that, 100 yards wide.
Uh-huh.
Bang, they go out there and you just see them come down in a pattern out on the water. They said, booch, like that. That's all you saw. It went on down in a hurry then because they were small and they had that vein on the back of it that made them spin. That kept them going straight, see. The beauty of them was if they didn't hit something, they didn't explode.
Oh.
See? But they were close enough together to where if you shot them right, one of them is going to hit that sub.
Right.
And when it did, they all went off.
Oh.
And blew him all to pieces.
So they were concussion to concussion each other, or?
Oh yeah.
That's how they were.
That's how it really.
Okay.
When one went off,
Mhm.
it triggered the others, and they all went off at the same time.
It's kind of like a cluster bomb.
That's right. Same thing that's underwater.
Uh-huh.
But any one of them could have blown a hole just about in the sub.
Huh.
But that's what they wound up.
But now how did that get rid of the air bubbles? Just because they didn't.
Well, it didn't explode. He
Unless
just kept on going to the bottom of the ocean.
Okay.
You could, if you missed him,
Okay.
track
You
him
could
another
still
time,
track
boom,
him.
you shoot another.
Okay,
paddle.
I understand.
Just reload and shoot, reload and shoot.
Okay.
But it was right in while I was in New York. They had a training base for something like that up there, where you could track subs and all. And you had a room down here and a room up here. This was the ship up here, and this was a sub down here.
Mm-hmm.
And you take turns trying to get away from each other, trying to sink each other. That was a lot of fun.
But you never really had to do that, right? You never really
They
had
just
to.
took us over there to show us that. This is what we got. But you could have probably transferred to either one of those services if you'd wanted to. But what we were most interested in was the explosive part.
Yeah.
But they took everybody over there and let them see what over here, let them practice. You play upstairs one time, downstairs another.
War games, huh?
Yeah. And they even had a room there that had platform on it, like a gun platform on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
Machine gun platform.
Mm-hmm.
And they had these 3D pictures on a big screen out there in front of you. Airplane come diving through there like that. You that thing would shoot, and it'd rock and roll just like a ship was,
Mhm.
and you were supposed to try to hit him with that.
Yeah.
And what you were shooting was a light beam up there. And it registered if you ever hit him. It registered how many hits you had.
First
and
video
that's something
game.
they're training your gunners is
Yeah.
what it was, how to lead him, you know, and
Yeah.
shoot him and all like that.
See, kids today have video games. Same thing.
Well, just went through a lot of stuff like that. But
Mhm.
like now out there in California, what we were doing out there, they had those new rockets, and they were trying to make a fuse for them that would give it different penetration into a ship. See, if you shot one that was supposed to penetrate a battleship, it'd go slap through a destroyer before it ever exploded. So we were trying to develop the delay time on the fuse to get that projectile inside the ship before it exploded. And like ships having different thickness of armor, you had to have different delay times on your fuses, and that's what we were testing out there with high-speed photography. Get in a bunker with this camera. The thing running, it's like an engine on a car or something running so fast. And they'd fire a projectile into this armor plate. And you photograph the explosion, whether it went off outside, inside, or going through.
You didn't have to stay there, did you?
You were in a bunker.
Oh, okay.
With this camera, see, off to the side.
Okay.
And you were photographing that projectile going through there. That's what you were doing. And when you saw it on the movie screen, it was just coming along real slow like that. Hit it, explode, going through or whatever. So it was trying to develop different fuse delays for different thicknesses of ship's armor.
And so did you?
Oh yeah. That's what that base was for. That's what they were. And they were developing them for the rockets too. Because those were airplane-fired rockets. They were fired from an airplane, and they were developing for penetration on them too when they hit the ship, because they mostly going to hit from the top. So your armor's not near as thick on top of the ship as it is.
Well, did they then, are they the ones that developed eventually, like the tracking device, thermal tracking, or?
That came after the war. We didn't have it. But the only electronic thing we had back then was what they called a proximity fuse. Your anti-aircraft stuff, you had a thing you stick it in and it cut the fuse to a certain time limit and all like that. And you figured it's going to take it that long to get up there, and if you overshoot him, it's going to explode beyond him. If it doesn't get to him before it explodes, well, you've wasted that round. But they wanted something to get the projectile as close to the plane as they could. So each one of these projectiles had a radar unit in the nose of it. And they first started using it in Europe. That when you fired that, because it was armed after it left the gun, the rifling in the gun after so many revolutions, it's armed, it's ready. You fire that up there, hoping to hit the plane or get close to it anyway. With this radar signal from this projectile, you had a little plastic cap on the nose, and that's where the antenna was in there. As long as that range was closing, getting closer, nothing happened. But the second, fraction of a second, that range started opening up, either to the side or wherever, or a direct hit, this fraction of a second, that projectile started leaving the plane, it exploded. So you didn't have to hit him direct. When you fired it up there, it was going to explode. When it got as close as it was going to get to the plane, it would explode.
But it would sense it through?
Distance is what it was.
Just distance. Okay.
But when they had them out there in the Pacific, I don't know what they did in England, But if you shipped some to the Pacific, an officer had to account for them when they were loaded. He had to stay with them till they got off of the ship. And he had to count them off of that ship. You had to accept them and count them coming off of the ship. And those numbers sure better coincide. Because you couldn't fire them within so many miles of land.
Oh.
Because they didn't want the Japs to catch one or get one.
Uh-huh.
So it was just a secret weapon, what it was.
Yeah.
But they were all stored separate. And any time we sent one, shipped one from the depot to a ship, one of our officers had to accompany it.
Really?
And we signed it, that officer signed it out, so many, at the depot. When he got to the ship, he signed so many to the ship's gunner.
And go ahead, I'm sorry.
And he had to sign for them.
The gunner did.
The gun officer on the ship. He had to sign for
Okay.
each one.
Now, when these were fired, were they fired any differently than any other?
Just like the rest of them.
Okay.
5-inch 38 projectile.
And did the guy firing him know he had something different?
I doubt it.
Okay.
It's the projectile itself, the explosive part.
Uh-huh.
This was just a different fuse in the end of it. It's what
Okay.
this was. The rest of the projectile was just like it.
And I mean, were there any statistics to prove if they were more effective or not?
Well, it later came out over in England. I guess they didn't mind firing them over land over there. That they'd have never won the battle of England without them.
Oh, really?
And when they got them, they started shooting down those German bombers.
Uh-huh.
And that's about the only way you could shoot down one of those kamikaze planes, too. Because once he zeroed in on your ship, he coming in. He locks his control, and you got to blow him up, or he's gonna hit you one. Or if he aimed a little wrong or something, you could set him on fire maybe, or shoot a wing off of him, something like that. But those proximity fuses, it'd blow him out there. But that's what saved them from them out there.
And now, when were these developed throughout the war, or when were these finally developed?
We started getting them out there right after we got there.
Oh.
Right toward the end of the war.
Okay. So you, I don't know, you were in Guam by 43?
No. See, I went to school in the first part of 44.
Okay, so you didn't
Guam,
get...
I shipped out the last of 44.
Last of 44,
yeah.
Okay.
That's when I shipped out.
And then you were really only over there then about a year. Because you were home for your birthday in October in 45.
Right. I left my family July the 4th. That was her birthday. July the 4th in Massachusetts.
Okay.
And I didn't see them again. But my wife came to California just before we shipped out. You see, I went to California and went through that rocket school
okay.
out there.
So that's July 43
Mm-hmm.
at that time?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's when I was out there in the fall of 44.
Now, when you were in Guam, did you know pretty much what was going on? You said, when you were in Florida, in Jacksonville, you knew everything that was going on right away. But what about when you were in Guam? Did you know about the invasion in Normandy?
What was going on. They had, bulletins out and all this kind of stuff. And of course, us being in touch with all the ships that were going and coming from up there, they were coming to get ammunition, and we were in touch with them, their officers and everything. We had our officers had to carry it down there to them, and they had to sign for it. A lot of the casualties, ships and all from up there, shot up and all, was coming back into Guam for harvesting, and they'd try to outfit them as good as they could to try to get them back to the States. And I know there was one cruiser came in there, the whole bow was going off of it. And they put a temporary bow on it, the way you could sail back to the States.
I know the Hornet lost the front, its whole front, in a typhoon. It was.
They had a typhoon when we were over there.
Yeah.
Oh, that was something else.
They said, I mean, some of the guys said that was worse than the war for them if they were on a ship, you
I
know.
imagine it was if they were on the ship. Some of
Uh-huh.
them turned over just,
Yeah.
and some of them rolled up to an angle they never were designed to go that far.
Mhm.
But they right themselves again.
Huh.
They lost a bunch of. The weather was strange to me over there because it was only 10 degrees off the horizon. But you had wet season and dry season.
Mhm.
You didn't have summer and winter. It was
Just
wet
wet and dry.
and when it rained,
But how did that affect
it
you? I
rained
mean,
for 6 months and it'd be dry for 6 months.
but how did that affect this ammunition?
It was all packed in
Okay.
containers.
Okay.
Even your small arms ammunition, rifle ammunition,
Mhm.
all in sealed cans, in wooden boxes. See, so
And where was all this made? Is this the stuff that was made like in Chicago?
it was made all over the United States, I
Okay.
guess, and shipped out to places like that, and then we'd distribute it
Mhm.
where the ships wouldn't have to come all the way back. Yeah, they just pull in out there.
Okay.
They'd come in one day, and you had to have the stuff ready for them. They'd radio ahead and see what they needed. You'd have it ready. You'd be down there, and they'd take a bow and go on again. So, small arms and all. There was one variation of the 40 millimeter anti-aircraft round when they came out with it. They had a lot of trouble with it. You fire something up there, it's going to come back down somewhere. And it was still alive coming back down.
Yeah.
See, because they hadn't hit the thing. So, in a gun battle, I mean, aerial, against aircraft and all, you had stuff falling all over your own ships and everything out there. These fellas out there in these gun tubs and all. I don't know how many of them, I never seen a statistic on how many of them got hurt or killed
By their own.
with the stuff falling back on the ships out there. So then they decided, each one of them had a tracer in the back of it. They modified them to where after so long of burning, that tracer would set them off, explode them up in the air. Every ship out there that had any had to come in and be replenished. And we had those things coming in there about millions.
But there'd still be shrapnel, wouldn't it? I mean, would there be?
Oh yeah, anytime you shoot one, the shrapnel's coming down.
Yeah.
That's the reason they wore them big old steel helmets, not like the helmet you wore on shore. They had them big old umbrella-like looking thing. And those fellas, no gun tubs, they caught hell. But all that stuff, everything went up, had to come back down.
Yeah.
But we had to take all that stuff back in there, see, and we just stored it out in the open up there in the bum area or something. And they said, well now, disarm them and ship the brass back. We can use the brass over. Lord have mercy, 1 million rounds of that stuff sitting in one pile. The skipper, sharp as he was, said, let's have some fun if we're going to do that. They had an aircraft right over the mountain down next to the water. They had an anti-aircraft training center where they put these little drone airplanes up there, and they'd practice. All the gunners on the ships and all have to come in and practice. Yeah. He went down there and made it out with them, We'll bring our own ammunition. Will you let us shoot the guns? All you want. So instead of having to pull it all apart and blow the primer in it and everything, we take it down there and shoot it. Then bring the brass back and ship the brass. So you go out there on Sunday or something like that, give your day off if you had a day off.
That's how you became a good hunter, huh?
And they'd put one of them little airplanes. We never could hit the cotton picking thing. You sure could bust a lot of shit up. But we had just a mountain of that mess piled up over there when I left. That very seldom would we ship anything back.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked one of my buddies after I got back, I said, what the devil ever do with all that brass and all of it? Took it out and dumped it in the ocean.
Golly.
Said it cost more to ship it back than it was worth. And said we had to take it out and dump it. So we had to not only dump ours, we dumped Japanese stuff, we dumped 1 million rounds of their stuff out there. Yes, they had those keys. slaps full of ammunition, stuff like that. We put it on a big barge, take it out and dump it. It wasn't very far to deep water off Guam.
Mm.
The deepest part in the ocean is right offshore.
Right there.
They had a big old, I call it outboard motor, big old motor thing. On these big old steel barges and bolt them together, big chunks of them. And you put those engines on the back of them and go out there and just shove the stuff over the side. Right down in that deep water. We hope that's where it all went.
No, but they weren't armed, so they couldn't explode, or were they armed?
They're not armed till you fire them.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot about stuff.
Well, all your guns
Sorry.
have rifling on them, like that. And your big guns, of course your rifle, that's to stabilize your bullets. What it is, keep it in tumbling. It keeps it flying true and straight. But your big guns, of course they had rifling in it too. But the ones that had fuses on them was a centrifugal fuse. When you spin it, there's a slider block in there that's got the firing pin blocked off from the explosive charge. As it goes, you got a firing pin, and you got a booster, then you got a booster charge, then you got the main charge. There's a slide between them. And when you spin one, this thing's weighted with a spring behind it. So as long as you don't spin it, that slide stays in front of your firing pin. And your booster's in a little tin in there anyway. And so when you fire it and give it a centrifugal motion, that slide backs out of the way. And it stays out of the way as long as that shell's spinning. And then when it hits something, that firing pin's right into the booster, and bang, you got it. You may have a delay element ahead of it, depending on how much penetration you want to see. But that's the start of the process when that firing pin hits that booster. And so that's the reason you spin one. Is not only give it stabilization, but it's safe until it gets beyond the gun. Because it's spinning as it goes out the end. Okay. And then when that backs out, now your aircraft fuses were propeller driven. They're on the end of the nose wheel because we had bombs we had to look after too. Yeah. You got a little propeller on the front of the bomb, and there's a wire when you load it. You don't put the fuse in the bomb until you put the bomb on the plane. And then you screw the fuse in it. You put your wire, the safety wire, runs up to your release mechanism in the cockpit. That propeller won't turn as long as that safety wire is just a wire through the spin-on. That's what it is. And it can't turn. It has to turn so many hundred revolutions before the firing pin gets out of the way. And then it's on. And when it hits, it's the same principle. But the airplane bomb, the fuse on it, you didn't have this spinning motion to arm it. You had this propeller on the front of it. And it would either screw completely off or screw out far enough to where your firing pin, you'd have to make so many revolutions before your firing pin would be in place. The block in it was held by your propeller. So, in other words, that propeller had to go through all of its motion, say 2-3 miles of flying, before that bomb was ever armed. And they didn't pull their firing control in the cockpit till they got ready to drop that bomb. Because once they did, that bomb
could blow them up.
And he can't come back and land with that bomb armed. When he hits the ship, it's going to go off. So if he ever armed it and didn't use it, he had to drop it in the ocean somewhere. But that's the two different type bombs that you might have. Of course, a lot of your bombs have a base fuse, you call it, a fuse in the bottom end of it that is, and it's on with a wire too, so where when it goes off, when you drop it, then it's away from you, and that wire pulls out of it. See, then the next thing it hits, it's going to go off.
But how much pressure does it have to hit? I mean, how much force?
Oh, the weight of the bomb had set it all moving.
Okay, so I mean, if some guy just moved it in the, I mean, it wouldn't go off.
Yeah, you could.
You could?
You could hit it with something hard enough.
Okay.
Especially, one that your bomb fuse.
Uh-huh.
You could hit it hard enough with a hammer, something, it'd go off.
Oh, okay.
And that's one trouble with a mortar shell. It's
not stable, like.
It's not stable at all.
Mm-hmm.
When you drop it down in that tube, you better be hunting hard.
Mm-hmm.
Because when it comes out of that barrel, it's on. It can hit the twig on the tree and it'll go off.
Oh.
They're that sensitive. So you use it in the open, and you get out of the way. When you turn it loose, you can hold it up there, see.
Oh.
It's safe as long as you don't drop it down that tube. The firing pin's down the bottom of the tube.
Uh-huh.
Now when you drop it, it goes down in there, boom, and it comes out. It fires a charge down there that drives it wherever you want it to go. See? And it's armed all the way. You would never fire it through a tree or anything like that. You do when it hits a limb up there. It's going to go off.
Huh.
Because when it comes out the end of that barrel, it's ready to fire. But it's the only ordnance that's, like that. But they got those in several sizes, too. The different mortars.
What's the, I'm almost out of tape here, but why the word ordnance? I mean, what is the origin of that word that would, do you know?
I don't know what ordnance means.
Okay. Okay.
To me, it's mechanical.
Yeah, okay.
It's anything, I guess anything that would destroy or fire or anything like that. Torpedoes an ordnance.
Uh-huh.
Bombs an ordnance.
Uh-huh.
Rifle is a piece of ordnance. Pistol is a piece of ordnance.
I wonder why it's called that, though. I don't know.
Look in the dictionary and see what
okay.
the description of ordnance is.
Yeah.
Well, I got one another. See what it says ordnance is.
Well, that's okay. I just thought maybe you knew off the top of your head if...
It's always been ordnance.
Well, I really appreciate... Is there anything else you'd like to mention, or... I know your wife is waiting to eat dinner.
It is that.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. Like I say, I just, never did see any, real combat or anything.
Well,
like
I think
Most of mine
I learned a lot from you.
Was supplying the stuff that helped them get the job done.
Exactly.
That's what we were supposed to do. I know when you got something like we call a star shield. It shoots up there and it's got a parachute with a big flare on it. We had one destroyer come in there one time, needed some more star shields. What you been lighting up? What do you need star shield for? So we shot everything we had in it. We didn't care whether it exploded or not. We were shooting at it.